Welcome back to Sex, Brains and Money, Sans Bonbon for the rest of the show, although she may be making a special guest appearance during the closing segment, depending on how many of you tweet me to say how much you enjoyed her appearance. But in the meantime, now we have Deb Singh from the TRCC joining us. How are you today, Deb?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. So you're going to talk to us today about the event that's going on in a couple of days, Take Back the Night. Could you tell us a little bit about the history of Take Back the Night?
Well, many people have heard about Take Back the Night, as it's a global event that happens around the world. Essentially, it's about our right to be able to walk the streets free of the fear of violence. But for Toronto and the Toronto Rape Crisis Centre, Multicultural Women Against Rape, where I work, it's so much more than that. Of course, it's about creating visibility around the issues of sexual violence, being able to create awareness around the ideas of domestic violence, sexual assault, childhood sexual assault, but also it's a place for us to talk about institutional violence that we experience and that survivors are often impacted by when they have experienced a sexual assault. But also Take Back the Night in itself is one moment where as survivors we can all get together and have 1-2 hours maybe of safer space and empower ourselves and take over the streets and scream and yell and feel empowered by our experiences rather than disempowered by sexual violence.
Absolutely. And there's no question that you need to spread awareness about these sorts of things because what was it, only 2 weeks ago that the mayor of soon-to-be, or the niece of soon-to-be former Mayor Ford,
yeah, I hope so.
fingers crossed, the man just keeps digging his own grave.
Yeah,
but,
indeed.
His niece, Krista Ford, sent out a tweet where she, was recommending that, women not dress like a whore in order to, avoid sexual violence. And I thought, so does that mean that I shouldn't wear a suit? Because being a whore myself. Can you tell us a little bit more about why it's so important for us to spread that awareness and what sort of institutional violence that we really need to confront?
Well, I think it's very interesting because to link the institutional violence with Krista Ford's comment is very clear, as women experience sexism in the world, but also racism and homophobia, transphobia and ableism, among many other kinds of oppressions. We experience that on an interpersonal level as well as an institutional level, sadly, by the governments and programs and education institutions that say that they're here to support us and sort of deconstruct those experiences. And so when a woman like Krista Ford, a woman says don't dress like a whore, which is so loaded in on so many levels, it's also that rape culture that says it's everyone is thinking that it's okay to sexually assault women. Everyone's thinking that sexism is okay. Everyone thinks that it's okay to not pay women the same amount that men get paid in 2012 in North America. So it's no wonder that another young person, but also a woman from that place, is going to speak to the same thing that the rest of the world is perpetrating around a culture where violence against women is very normalized.
Absolutely. And when you think about it, it's really insulting to men as well to suggest that they're incapable of restraining themselves. If they see a scantily clad woman, all of a sudden they have no ability to restrain themselves in any way. And I just saw a meme that was going around with a list of things to avoid sexual assaults. And instead of the typical, carry a rape whistle, it said carry a rape whistle. So if you feel that you're about to rape a woman, you can blow the whistle and have somebody stop you. And it was redirected towards men. So I think that there's definitely a need for us to sort of spread awareness about this. So let's talk about the actual event, Take Back the Night. Can you tell us some more of the details as to when it's going on and what the plan is?
Absolutely. Well, I'm proud to say that this year's Take Back the Night is the 32nd in the city of Toronto, hosted by many organizations, not just the Toronto Rape Crisis Centre. It's happening this Saturday, September 15th, at the Maseret Cowan Community Centre, which is located at 220 Cowan Avenue at Queen and Dufferin in Parkdale. And it's going to be exciting. We have a community fair where organizations can come out and put out their resources for participants. We have a rally with a ton of speakers, musicians, and of course the march.
Great. Well, it sounds like you have it really well organized, and I'm sure you're expecting a really great turnout as well. And what better way to stand up to all these institutional pressures and everything else that you've been speaking towards and speak out against them? I think that's really great. Is there anything else that you'd like to add? Anything else? Anything further you'd like to discuss in terms of what's been going on with society and with what's been going on with the Take Back the Night marches and stuff like that? Is there something else that you'd like to say to that?
Well, the city of Toronto has been plagued with a lot of reports of sexual violence in the last 2 weeks or so.
I just read today that there's a 10th victim in the Christie Pitts area who has now come forward and said that she was sexually assaulted and was fortunately able to get away. But 10 people inside of 2 weeks, that's ridiculous. That's an epidemic, but it doesn't seem like the city's treating it that way.
And it's really challenging because we know that if there are survivors who reported, then there are probably a lot more who didn't. Number one. Number two, the only reason why we know about some of these assaults is because they have been reported to the police. But if we're having 10, 11, and this is not just out in the Bloor and Christie area, of course, there have been reports in Parkdale, Kensington, Yonge and Wellesley, St. Clair, and of course there's sexual violence happening all over the city that, again, people aren't reporting. So this event comes at a very particular time in the city. It's been a crucially violent summer in Toronto, with a lot of different things happening around violence, this entire city, for the city. But I think that this event will be a really powerful place to create safety and empowerment for people in the community.
Absolutely. Well, I commend you and your organization for being there for survivors who do experience sexual assault. And I'm sure that, just like the rest of us women out there, you're hoping for a day that your organization doesn't need to exist.
Exactly.
And you're hoping that, you can get to a point where, there is no need for that sort of support. But until that happens, I'm glad that you're there, and I'm really glad that you're speaking out against it and taking a very proactive approach. I think that's fantastic. So thanks very much for being on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.
Great. We're going to take a short commercial break, 2 minutes, and we will be right back with Anderson Todd to tell us a little bit about psychological psychotherapy. Stay tuned.